Hello, I'm Sally Wiener Grotta, and this is What If, Why Not, How? Where I ask people who have interesting stories and ideas questions that are on my mind.
My guest today is Judith Sarah Schmidt, whose new book, Blessings from Broken, is an interesting counterpoint to my newest book, Daughters of Eve. Her Blessings from Broken is a compilation of her personal reflections on the traditional weekly Parsha. The Parsha is the portion of the Hebrew Bible that's read each week on the Jewish Sabbath. Judith's book is filled with wisdom garnered over 9 decades of life and represents her journey inward to connect with her ancestors. In Counterpoint, My Daughters of Eve is a discussion workbook based on 12 of my essays that explore the nature of living in the 21st century through the lens of the stories of the women of the Hebrew Bible, such as Eve, Rebecca, Sarah, Hagar, and so forth. It's a weaving of questions meant to connect me with other women, those alive today, as well as those who came before. I chatted with Judith a couple of weeks ago about our various perspectives and rather different processes, and it was such a creative, dynamic sharing. I just knew I had to have her join me on an episode of What If, Why Not, How? Like me, Judith's resume doesn't exactly sound like one that would lead her to explore and write about ancient Hebraic texts. She's a clinical psychologist and co-director of the Center for Intentional Living. Judith studied waking dream therapy, which we're going to have to discuss, with Madame Colette Alboker Muscat. I'm sure I've messed up the name. You'll have to correct me, Judith, in Jerusalem, and also works with grief and trauma, all of which is key to her approach in Blessings from Broken. But it's her unique voice as a poet and prose writer that makes Blessings from Broken an exquisite meditation. As Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt said in the foreword to that book, Judith reminds me how to find beauty in what is broken, which is all of us. And it's true, yes. By the way, Judith is also the author of In the Garden of Love and Loss, a year-long spiritual guide through grief, and her poems and articles are published in a variety of journals. Welcome, Judith. I am so delighted you could join me today.
Sally, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here and to talk with you about these things that are so important. Thank you.
And thank you. Before we start, I'd love our audience to hear a bit of Blessings from Broken so they can understand the meditative and poetic quality of your book. Could you read a portion, please?
Yes, I'll read it, and just let me say that what you'll hear here is personal, and the personal is woven all through my writings because I'm taking the journey through Torah, and so I'm sharing my journey here. My own beginnings, this is for the opening of Genesis and the beginning of our world, of creation. My own beginnings begin with the coin. The coin was an ordinary silver dollar, round, like a full moon. It has the year 1933 printed on it, the year that the light of me poured down into my body and into the garden of the lives of my mother and father. The tree of knowledge was bitter at that time. There was little money, stale bread, and very little work. It was the Depression. The coin lived in my father's pocket from the day I was born. Every morning, in the garden of his life, he was called. He called out, "My help, where are you?" My father garnered his strength to answer, "Hineni, I am here." My father would somehow find the strength to get up, to get dressed, to find the hope, to look for work that day. Each day, he would touch the coin of hope in his pocket. My father carried the shard that was his, the shard of his poverty and the coin of his hope. The tree of knowledge was bitter, but the hand that touched the coin in his pocket was devoted to lift up whatever sparks he could. He did that for me, for I was a fruit on the tree of his life. In my father's pocket, the silver coin shone like the full moon. Every day it led his way to work and home again, until at the age of 76, he could no longer dress himself. He could no longer reach his hand into his pocket to touch the silver light, to raise up the broken pieces. It was time for my father to rest. The coin of love and hope lived with me for a long time. My hand would touch the coin, the hope and faith at the roots of my beginning. The tree of knowledge was bitter, but the tree of life, which we were told not to eat of, in the end, it was so sweet, so fruitful, a blessing and forgiveness. A few years ago, I passed my father's coin of hope to a dear friend who is devoted to a project of helping in Rwanda, where there is much that is broken from the genocide to lift up. Now my friend carries in his pocket my father's coin of faith as he journeys forth to raise up the shards of Rwanda. My father looks down and smiles.
Wow, that's just beautiful, Judith. I'm assuming that being a poet, while the coin may have been real, it is also very metaphorical to you. Was it actually a physical coin?
Oh, it was a physical coin. My father, every day until he no longer dressed, and made sure that that coin went from one pocket to the other pocket. And when he became ill, he sat me next to him and he took the coin and put it in my hand. And he said, now, Judith, you carry it. It's yours to carry. So it will be passed through the generations as a coin of hope and promise of traveling to the promised land. Yeah.
It also felt like it was a shard or a piece of your heritage that you carry with you also. It's, would I be correct in assuming that?
Well, Sally, my heritage becomes more and more important to me as I came to my 90th year, because on my father's tree, I'm the last one. And I feel that my life is called to bow to those who came before me.
Mm-hmm.
And my ancestors were not able to come here because they didn't survive.
Yes.
My father came here, but that coin also belongs. It's here for them too.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not have written this Torah journey were it not for it being dedicated to my ancestors, because I know that this is the book they live by.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to bow to them as the last one on the tree. And so this writing is my bowing to them and to say thank you for my life. And yeah.
I have so many questions for you. I don't know where to start. Am I correct in understanding that you were not a student of the Tanakh, of the Hebrew Bible, or of the sacred texts before recent years? Am I correct about that?
You'd go to synagogue on the high holidays. My parents as a child. My mother lit the Sabbath candles. I think she did it because it was passed on to her. And I'll never forget her going like this with the light and putting out and wearing something over her head and covering her eyes. all of those things touched me so deeply. They went into my soul, you know. So I was initiated into my tradition,
Mhm.
but I didn't really study anything until I turned 70.
Mhm.
And I don't know where it came from, Sally, but I said, I want to be Torah. And so I was given the Parsha Toldot, and I studied it.
Could you tell our audience what Toldot is, what the portion
Uh,
is?
oh my God, Toldot, I'm sorry. I can't.
Okay. It's okay.
Uh, but it is about Jacob and Esau. And,
Okay.
and
That's
what
it.
I did was I studied for the whole year, and I wrote poetry and I wrote prose, and it is published, and it's called Longing for the Blessing.
Mhm.
And Bait has republished it. And so that was a tremendous initiation for me.
Mhm.
My parents were already gone, you know, but that turned me. And after that, I went to a wonderful synagogue for years, and here I am. So I feel I had a slow journey back to my beginnings, you know. And the interesting thing, Sally, I'll just say one more thing. I don't usually talk this, tell me if I'm if
I'm enjoying your conversation, so please tell us.
the incredible thing is that in my synagogue, there's a tiny synagogue in Westchester County in Pleasantville, and there the windows were very pale and green stained glass windows,
Mhm.
and you couldn't really see it uh, outside from them, but the light was there, and whenever I looked to those windows when I sat at synagogue, on the other side of the window, clear as day, I saw my ancestors in
Mhm.
front of their shul, wearing their hats and their Orthodox clothing, and talking to one another and holding their tonic, you know. And I'm thinking, the veil, there's hardly a veil, you know, and that's how it was for me.
Mhm.
And so when I wrote, I felt I was writing the thread of connection to them that I
Mhm.
never let go of, you know.
I'm an accidental scholar. I had no intention. Frankly, I'm not religious at all. My faith rests in other human beings.
Yes.
Um, but I do love my heritage, our heritage. And I'm in the middle of writing a novel that's in which the women of the Bible play a very important part as a subject of study. So I had to study it. And the more I studied, more I researched for my novel, the more I wrestled with the text because there were so few women in it. And what the women that are in it are mostly stick figure women. They're not really fully formed. Um, they become fully formed through interpretation through the millennia. But in the original text, they're there to augment the men's stories mostly.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's this writing is also about connection. But for
Mhm.
me, it's connection with other women, with us finding our own voices in this world today, and understand and use and through the lens of the rich heritage we have.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is, Judaism is about interpreting and reinterpreting constantly. That's what's called midrash, and
Exactly.
that our rabbis have told us we have written midrash, which I never thought I ever would. But
So,
I do want to ask you so many questions.
before you ask me a question,
Yes,
may I respond to what you're saying?
please. Yes, please do.
I'm so touched by what you're saying because, and this is probably, maybe it will lead into your question, because uh, I too found that the women were more receded than the men
Yes.
in Torah. And yet, because of midrash, and if I ask myself, what is the midrashic process? It's really a dreaming process. It's like taking what's in front of you and going into dream time with it. And I'll give you an example.
Please do.
So Sarah basically exiles Hagar
Yes.
with Ishmael. Basically, and Hagar almost dies.
Yes. And Ishmael, her son, almost dies.
Yes. But in my telling of the story, Hagar comes back. Sarah calls her back in their old age. I mean, Sarah's already in her hundreds, but in her
Uh-huh.
old age, they sit together. They
Uh-huh.
make, they make peace.
Yes.
That's the only way I could enter Torah, is to carry the dream on, to carry
Mhm.
the story on.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that leads to what you were going to ask me, but
Well, that interestingly, I came to that a similar point, but you see, my methodology isn't the poetic, beautiful, meditative process. Mine is a questioning process, and that's why my book, Daughters of Eve, is considered a discussion workbook.
right.
And after my essay about Sarah and Hagar, I ask the question: if you could bring Sarah and Hagar together years later, right there, discussion.
Isn't that wonderful?
So we came to the same point.
Yes, that's incredible. Wow.
And I really want to hear what my readers will do with that question. There are a lot of questions like that I want to hear what they do with it.
That's
And I'm very
beautiful.
excited about that.
Yeah,
Now, you
yeah.
talked about dream, and you mentioned that you are trained in waking dream therapy, which is central to what your career was. I would love to understand what waking dream therapy is. I feel like it sounds very Freudian to me, because he was so into dreams, but he was also so into penis envy that, it's like I can't go there. But he just didn't. I don't feel he ever understood women, so that's his problem. It's like a lot of the men in the Bible, they didn't understand. So please tell me a little bit about waking dream
Yeah,
therapy, and then how you use it in your process,
I
please.
will tell you, and how I use it in my writing. So, uh, waking dream therapy is as far from Freud's understanding of dreams as it could possibly be. Um, I have a friend who I've known since 12 years old, and she moved to Jerusalem. And one day, this must be about 30 years ago, she calls me and she says, Judith, you have to come. You have to come to Jerusalem now. Come. I have found someone I know you will love as a teacher. And that teacher was Colette Abake Muscat. She came from Europe. She had been part of the French resistance, and she lived on a small street in Jerusalem with a blue gate. So her place was called the Blue Gate School.
Hmm.
And I'll give you an example. The first time I came, she knew, because we had sat and talked, she knew that my daughter had passed away when she was 4.
Oh,
So the first thing Colette did with me, she said, close your eyes. See yourself as Abraham leading Isaac up the mountain to be sacrificed.
oh my.
That was the first thing, the first exercise she ever did with me. And she said, and see what it is like, be Abraham sacrificing Isaac.
Oh,
And what happened in my waking dream, you could call it midrash, I heard Sarah at the bottom of the mountain, wailing, "You will not sacrifice my son. Bring my son back to me."
Mhm.
And Colette said, "That's not supposed to be the exercise. Why did you do that?" but in my writing,
Mhm.
in my posture writing here, I say Sarah's still screaming. She is still wailing for any child who is sacrificed.
Mm.
And she could not prevent Isaac from coming back blinded because it was too much for him.
Mhm.
And but he came back.
Yeah.
So that was so profound an experience for me that I went back to Colette's for the following 5 summers,
Oh my.
stayed for 2 months, 3 months, and studied with her. And then there was a group of us who would come from New York.
Mhm.
Some of people listening here might know Dr. Gerald Epstein. He was a student of hers. Francis Clifton was a student. My friend Judy Besserman was a student. And together back in New York, we practiced together, and it became a devotion for me because it was very kin to the place in me that writes poetry.
Yes.
And it just felt like just so natural for me to enter the space, and to just journey in it and to see what unfolds. And that's what's in my book with almost every parsha.
So when you used it as therapy, you helped people work through their issues by envisioning. Uh,
I have yes, when I work in therapy, I do mostly I work with trauma,
mhm.
and people don't want to go near,
Yes.
and but we slowly find a helper, an ally, a protector to go with us, and with me holding the space, we go back and we find the healing,
Mm.
and we start over again.
Yes.
That's what I did in my own life after the loss of my daughter.
Mm.
So I'm not guiding people in any way that I have not been guided myself. So
Yeah.
it comes out of my own journey. My work with other people comes out of my own journey, and I'm so deeply grateful because it feels like sacred work.
Yes.
you know. So yeah,
That goes very much. I keep on seeing counterpoints in our work and in our philosophies from two very different areas. I treat storytelling that way, and it sounds to me like Waking Dream is a form of storytelling. And I'm hoping that as people engage in Daughters of Eve and the questions, and they listen, not just talk, but listen to each other, telling stories based upon the essays, and the questions, that there can be a healing among people who maybe come from different backgrounds, different ways of looking at faith or lack of faith, or
yes, yes,
whatever it is. It isn't about the religious aspect; it's about the human aspect, I feel.
yeah,
And what is wonderful about the women and the men in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible, is that they are so human. They're not examples of saints. They are examples of what we could do as mistakes and what we could do when we do things right. And I like that because it gives us a way of entering the stories ourselves, and
yeah,
and and sharing in them, that you reshaped Sarah and Hagar's story by entering it
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I,
So our work is
yeah,
very similar.
in some ways, at least
Yeah.
our hopes for the books are similar, but our approaches, our literary approaches are quite different. I'm an essayist. I'm a
Yeah.
storyteller, but I'm an essayist and I'm a questioner. I'm filled with questions. And what I do is I'm putting the questions out there with
Yeah.
possible answers or some traditional answers.
Yeah.
And a lot of the traditional answers I rail at. I mean, what do I rail at? But it's just, I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong in mine.
Yeah.
You're inviting people into your heart. I mean, I share personal stories too,
Yeah.
about my mother, about my
Yeah.
sister, and whatever. But and my grandmothers especially. But you are bringing people into your waking dream. I'm trying to guide them into their storytelling. So you're bringing them in. I'm trying to take them out forward. But
Well,
it's all the same thing, though. It's going to the same.
there's a thread that's similar because I
Yes.
will share my midrash, my waking dream about the Pasha.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the same time, after that piece of my writing, in each
Yes.
Pasha, there's
Yes.
a reflection
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
people to enter the Pasha themselves
Yes. Yes.
as it's alive in their own life now.
Exactly.
That I encourage them to have a journal and to write,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and and to enter that journey because I didn't realize, Sally, until I finished writing this, that this journey is such a human journey.
Oh, yeah.
It's particularly for me, if I were teaching right now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
stopped 45 years of teaching this last June when I turned 90,
Wow.
I I would be using this Old Testament as a
Mm-hmm.
text on trauma. This, everybody in this book is on a healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
Whole people is on a healing journey.
Yeah.
And I feel that Torah is still going on now. It's still
Oh,
very alive right now.
mhm.
So it's like it's not read as a kind of object of study, but more as a kind of um, world to enter for my own healing and
Wow.
the healing of my people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
people.
No, it is, we have been on very different journeys and the same journey.
Right.
And I love it. And I think that is what makes these stories survive all the millennia, and it
Right.
helps people survive the millennia. It's I find it wonderful. So we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about Sarah and Hagar, which is it's such a symbol of what's going on right now in our world. The anger, the jealousies, the misunderstandings. What I say in my essay is, why didn't they just talk to each other? Why can't they just listen? People talk to each other a lot. They don't listen to what the other's saying a lot. And why can't we just, and if we could take that lesson now, our world would be a heck of a lot healthier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then we have people like Ruth and Naomi. To me, they're the first women in the Hebrew Bible that they exist together as a unit without being accessories to men. In fact, men are accessories to their story. And they are from very different backgrounds. And they are women who learn to use their womanliness, what's expected of
Yes.
women at the time,
Yes.
to get what they need for their unit, their family unit, which is Ruth and Naomi,
Right.
and the eventual child.
Right. Right.
And so I use a very disrespectful phrasing that in many cases I feel like the women in at least in the early Genesis are essentially walking wombs. They're there to make babies, you know, and at least the way they are written,
Yeah.
and not the way we have interpreted them.
Yeah.
But here, the men are just there to provide the sperm for the baby, and the women actually form their own world. And I take a lot of joy in that. And I love men. Don't get me wrong. I have had a great relationship with my father. I had a fabulous relationship, best friend with my husband. I now have a lovely man in my life. But I think the connection, the understanding that we can learn from Ruth and Naomi of how women can work together, even if they are so different and from such different backgrounds, different generations.
Yeah.
I take heart from that. I take hope from that. And so that's my today's interpretation of Ruth and Naomi. Tomorrow may be another one, but that's today's.
That's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. And when I listen to you, Sally, who comes to my mind as a woman in Torah is Miriam, because
Oh,
I have I have a certain sense of her,
mm-hmm.
which is she I I think she was a woman. I, I I could use the word feminist before there was ever such a word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That she would take her baby brother in a basket and put him in the Nile to send him to safety. You know, who gets the strength to do that? You
And
know,
as a young girl, I mean, she's quite young at that point, she runs up to the Pharaoh's daughter
exactly,
and just
exactly,
says, "Oh, I'll get you a wet nurse for this baby." It's like,
exactly.
where did
And
she get that strength and sense of self?
many people see her as subservient to her brother Moses, who is the leader of the people. But I see her as the strength of feminine spirit
Yes,
that
yes,
she you know uh, sings across the river to freedom,
yes.
and what touches me is the devotion between Moses and her.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he finds out that she's talking about his wife,
Yes,
who's not a Hebrew but a Cushite,
right.
and talking with the other brother Aaron, and saying bad things about him. He could be totally threatened that she
Mm-hmm.
wants authority over him, and instead he says a prayer for her healing because
Right.
she develops white rashes called leprosy in those days, and then she's given a retreat. She's given a
Yes.
retreat, and I have a poem about that, in
Yes.
in the writing, because there's something so beautiful. And then my sense is that even after she dies, she's there with them. She's, so as so many people are who we've lost,
Yes. Well,
So
her water followed the people.
exactly,
She
exactly.
was she was the water. Women very often are water in the Bible, and her water, her well followed the tribe.
Well, her well was her heart.
Yes,
Her
yes.
well was the strength and
Mhm.
depth of her heart.
Yes,
And so,
yes.
you know,
The other part I love about her is that you mentioned it as they cross the Sea of Reeds, which is called in the vernacular the Red Sea, on the dry seabed,
yeah,
and they come out, and the waters converge on the army, and they start. And Miriam leads the women in song and dance, and I see that as her not only singing out, herself, but giving voice, helping the other women find their voices, find their dance, find their spirit. It was she was a classic leader in the old sense of a priestess, and that she would help women find. She was the leader of the women, the way Moses was the leader of the men. But she helped them. She didn't. She expected them to sing out loud too. That she did not have to be the only voice.
Absolutely.
I love that aspect of her.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And then what touches me so much, because it's so applicable to today.
Mm-hmm.
She's beseeched not to sing because they realize people were lost at sea.
Yes.
Egyptians who were chasing them were lost at sea.
Right.
Don't sing if anybody is lost.
Yeah.
Imagine today. Imagine today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is so much there that speaks to the heart and soul.
Yes.
That it's just, I never thought, Sally, I never thought that I would discover so much of myself and of life and of how to live a life in a true way of honoring all living,
Yes.
interbeing. I never thought that, that I would have that happen for me, but it's amazing. And again, I bow to my ancestors because I feel they gave this to me.
Mm-hmm.
Without them, I would never have done this,
And
So,
I bow also to the people who will come next.
yes.
I feel that, we're just links within a continuity.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing younger women and younger people interpreting through the lens of their lives.
Right.
This is why these books have lasted, is because we can reinterpret them in every generation.
Yeah.
And
Like a dream, like a dream.
like a dream.
Tell
Yes.
a dream, as many people are in the room, that will be how many dreams there are. And the same with this. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know my journey, how this happened to me is that I mentioned it was part of research for a novel. It was essentially, I was sitting I'm not a person who goes to synagogue that often, but I do belong to a wonderful little rural synagogue that's like family. So every once in a while I'll go in just to be with my family, and of course during the high holidays and such, and I go for Torah. Well, anyway, I was sitting in the synagogue, listening to people discuss the week's portion, the Parsha, and I wish I remembered which one it was. But it suddenly dawned on me that as they were talking, they weren't really talking about the Torah. They were talking about their own lives. And I said to myself, wow, what a literary device. And so I created these 6 women in the COVID years. Before the opening of the novel, their tiny rural synagogue is torched, is burnt down by a neo-Nazi. And the rabbi runs in to save a Holocaust Torah. This is one of the Torahs that were rescued out of the Holocaust. Something that is totally against any sensible person. You don't, and it's against all Jewish tradition. You don't sacrifice a life for a thing. But he does this. So, but that's before the book starts. The book is about 5 women who gather around a 6th, the rabbi's young wife, who just gives birth to their first child 2 weeks afterwards. And they form this COVID era bubble that they meet once a month to talk about the women of the Hebrew Bible.
Beautiful.
And then but what they're really doing, and what we're doing, is we're exploring their various different crises, personalities, lives, and exploring it. While in the outer world, in the interstitial material, the threat of another attack is coming closer and closer. And so how do they handle that? How do they handle COVID? But it's all through this exploration that they are having of themselves, of the type of journey you and I have had.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's powerful that it's in COVID time and you're taking their counsel. Wow.
But the reason I mention it is that was my entry into I had to study the women of the Torah, of the Tanakh, because for those who don't know, the Torah are the 5 books of Moses. The Tanakh includes the 5 books of Moses plus the rest of what is called the Old Testament by Christians. So I had to start studying them because I was going to be writing about it, and I needed 6 different interpretations of it.
Wow, wow.
And then the essays just poured out of me because
Yeah.
that's one of my processes, is writing essays.
Well, Sally, as people read it now and write, you'll have far more than 6 interpretations.
Yeah. Isn't that exciting? I find that so exciting. I found your interpretations, your poetry is just so, your prose and poetry, they both have the same,
Yeah, yeah,
it's not ethereal because it's very rooted. It's very, it's like the tree roots reaching deeper and deeper into the soil, to the water, the underground water. It's like, but it's all these different roots reaching in out of your heart into
yeah, yeah.
the past and into the future. It's beautifully done. I've read several chapters. I look forward to reading more of it. But it's something you have to take slowly, your book. It's something you have to absorb slowly. It's just wonderful, and I look forward to having a copy that you will sign for me.
Well, I think it can be read weekly, as
Yes,
an addition to the Parsha of the week.
yes,
And,
yes,
and then with time to write your own journey, so
yes.
because it's everybody's journey, it's not
Right,
yours or
exactly.
mine. It's an incredible um, history of a people, but also history of relationships, of family dynamic,
Very much.
of the world. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's incredible.
Because the framework of it is, there's a lot of ambiguity in the telling. Plus, linguistically, there's the possibility of interpreting it this way or that way, because the biblical Hebrew is so amorphous at times.
And it starts with the creation of the world before there are people.
Yes,
And for me, it's an ongoing journey of creation of the universe.
yes.
And that's what touches me so deeply,
Well, what is the saying? God the created the universe, and it's up to human beings to improve it, to finish the job, finish the job. Yeah. And I love that. I love that sense of responsibility that we have to try to do it right.
Yeah. Well, in the tradition, it's a partnership.
Yes.
It's a partnership because in the Kabbalistic tale of the creation, uh, God chooses man and woman and man, to pick up the broken pieces and to lift them up to complete creation. And so we each are born with
Yes.
our piece to carry and raise up. And I think that's what the Torah stories are about.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody has a piece to raise up, every one of us.
Like that little silver coin.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you writing now? A talent and a mind like yours, I'm sure you're writing something now.
I am. I'm writing, after my daughter died over the following years, I had a series of dreams
Mm.
that really was my wilderness journey. It guided me on my wilderness journey, those dreams. And I want to write them as tales of the healing of grief and
Mm.
the inner journey. And I want to write them for other parents,
Mm.
and almost like a children's, because I want it illustrated, you know. And I really want to offer this. So this is my next offering. Yeah, yeah,
Lovely. I look forward to reading that.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I
Judith,
look
this
forward
has
to start.
been that's always the big one, isn't it? Just starting it. This has been just, it's just wonderful. I think you and I can talk forever, and I hope we will talk again.
I hope so. Thank you, Sally. And we'll give each other signed copies of our books.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah.
So your book is Blessings from Broken, and it's being published by Bait.
Yes.
It just says Daughters of Eve is being published by Bait. And we both share the same editor, Rachel Barenblatt, who is a
Just
remarkable poet in her own right.
she's beautiful. And her website is The Velveteen Rabbi.
The Velveteen Rabbi, which is, I highly recommend it. I love reading it. She has a beautiful perspective, very healing perspective,
Yes.
not unlike yours.
Yes, yes.
It's quite beautiful. And I believe Time magazine once acknowledged her blog as being one of the more influential blogs out there.
How wonderful.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what exactly it was, but it was like a list of influential blogs because she reaches a lot of people. We're not, it just says your book and my book isn't just about Jews, it's about reaching people. And she does the same with her blog. It's the Velveteen Rabbi. I love the name. Well, Judith,
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sally.
it was wonderful.
Yes.
And I look forward to reading more of your book.
Okay. And me of yours. And well, okay.
So this is Judith Sarah Schmidt, and her book is Blessings from Broken, which will be out from Bait. I'm Sally Wiener Grotta, and my book is Daughters of Eve, and that will also be published by Bait, I believe, just a few weeks after Judith, so I don't have my date yet. It literally just became a little bit delayed, but it's early 2024 for me. And you can also reach me at sallywienergrotta.com, and on Facebook, Sally Wiener Grotta, LinkedIn, Sally Wiener Grotta, and YouTube. And Twitter, I hate to say, but I'm still there because so many good people I know are still there. I refuse to call it X. Thank you very much, and take care of yourself, and blessings on you.
Bye-bye.